By way of background, manufactured gas plant sites were very common in the U.S. Back in the 1800s, prior to the production of production of natural gas, or the identification of natural gas in this country. These plants produced gas from coal, which was used for community lighting, heating, cooking, and other needs. By the early 1950s, MGPs became obsolete due to the introduction of natural gas service. Many manufactured gas plant sites were associated with third-party owned properties, and as predecessor utility companies closed or consolidated and land use changed. As part of PECO's continued environmental efforts, the company began a program to restore former manufactured gas plant sites in this region. The next slide we've got is it's just a picture, an illustration from a book from 1961, which showed the historic gas service map for PECO Energy, showed the gas plant sites across the region. So just by way of background, an overview of PECO's MGP program, there were 26 former MGP sites throughout the 5-county service territory. PECO has undertaken an extensive program to manage and identify and kind of come up with plans to remediate the sites. This included stakeholder engagement, program schedule for all site closures, development of internal guidance documents to make sure we use a consistent approach, and developing remedial cost estimates for each of the sites. PECO also has a very strong safety program, wants to, working safe is the highest priority for PECO Energy. Since the early 1990s, PECO has restored 20 sites with the oversight of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. So the next slide is just an illustration of the historic Grayson Mill, where the former Darby BMZP manufactured gas plant site was located. This is a photograph taken from 1915. The next slide is a photograph taken of looking north towards the what is now the Century Paint Building, and this is again the location of where the former gas plant was located. The gas plant itself is actually a very small parcel. It only takes about a half acre in size. Just going forward here. So here's the Century Paint Building. Here's Darby Creek. Here's Pine Street, and here's Mill Street. And this photograph here was taken looking to the north at the southern end of the Century Paint Building. All right, just by way of background, the history of the Darby BMZP site. Gas plant operations at this site were between 1868 and 1903. So this is Civil War era facility way back. So it only operated for about 30 years. It originally was used to produce lighting for the mill at the Grayson Mill at this facility. The former manufactured gas plant structures included one 27,000 cubic foot gas holder, tar well, and one purifier room. And the purifier room was just used, it was a process they used to purify the gas prior to distribution to the community. Starting in 1899, Darby B was used for reserve production after the startup of the Darby A site, which was across the street. Between 1936 and 1963, the use of the site was not well documented, not known. Century Paint, the current owner of the property, began operations in 1963 and continued through the mid-2000s. Currently, the building is leased to several local businesses. The next slide is just a photograph looking north from the Pine Street Bridge, and the Century Paint Building is on the left-hand side, and it's looking up towards Darby Creek. The next slide is a photograph looking inside the Century Paint Building, just showing the construction of the building. Again, it's an old building, probably from the 1880s or so, but it's very well constructed. So in terms of investigations for this former MGP, pre-design investigations conducted by Stantec started in June of 2016. Prior to that, between 2009 and 2014, several investigations were undertaken by a previous consultant working for PECO. And we've got copies of reports for the work that both the previous consultant, PECOM, did, and also the work that we did here that we'll leave with the council tonight. So in terms of the work we did since June of last year, we did a wetland survey, and we delineated what's known as the ordinary high water mark. And the ordinary high water mark is important because it's I guess, a criteria that just once you determine that mark, it dictates whether or not the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will have jurisdiction over the waterway. So again, this project will involve work in Darby Creek, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has jurisdiction, so we have to get approval from them for the work. We also did building and bridge structural surveys. So